Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cast Ice, the podcast that explores the great big wild world of tabletop gaming that exists today. It's been said once or twice, mainly on this podcast, that we are in the middle of a gaming renaissance. There are just too many good games that we can spend our hobby time and our hobby dollars on, and it can lead to a serious case of not knowing what to play next. And I guess that's the purpose of this podcast. It's to talk with my guests about the games that we enjoy playing, to talk about big industry events, and to talk to the people who create these games. Now, today, we are going to be talking about listing for small point bolt action events. Now, we did talk a little bit about the generalities of it in an episode at the end of last year, in the last 10 episodes or so, where we talked to the gentleman behind Codswallop, and we talked about some of the lists that were played there, and, talked how the game tactically works a little different. This episode, though, I've had a lot of requests over the years to actually build a list online so folks can hear and see what my process is for creating an army list. So I'm going to combine the two, and we're going to talk about listing for small scale events, and as I'm preparing for one, and we're going to do it live. Now, if I'm going to build a list live and I'm going to be using Easy Army, which is something I almost never do, I think I'm going to need a little help. And joining me today is one of the best bolt action player / list writers I know, which means possibly in the world. Our good friend from Scotland, my brother from another mother, another golden D6, my main man, Alistair Unicomb. Welcome back, brother.
Mate, your intros, sometimes they hit the mark and sometimes they put a mark on your back. No, thanks, Brad. I'm really happy to be back with you and sharing this list building experience with your audience. It's going to be good fun.
Now, if I'm looking a little rough today, kids, it's because I just woke up and it's been a long week. So Al's fresh and fresh like a daisy and is enjoying a different kind of beverage. But I got my coffee and my He-Man cup and I'm ready to rock and roll. Yeah, there you go.
Well, it's the joys of recording content with a time difference. It's early in the morning for you and it's late on a Saturday night for me.
Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Al, let's talk about some of the things you've been doing recently. Obviously, you have your own podcast, Two Guys and a Dice Cup, which is the Blood Bowl podcast. If I'm going to listen to any Blood Bowl podcast, it's the one I go to. And I have been getting increasingly Blood Bowl curious again. In fact, I may have just bought another team. But you guys just did a really fascinating conversation about the phenomenon that's being bandied about more in the UK than here or in the US, but the concept of prizes for events being money and what that will do to the game. And I don't want to steal your content, but I thought that episode was off the chain. It was really, really well argued. Clearly you'd done your research and you'd taken notes and you'd thought about it. And as I was painting for CanCon, I really got into that episode. In fact, I listened to parts of it twice. It made me think so much. Do you want to talk about that topic or other things you've been doing on the podcast recently? Because
happy to talk about that really briefly. As you said, we really thought about the content for that podcast, and we didn't want to have the quick knee-jerk reaction. When somebody says, this wargaming tournament, and we spoke about it in a way that it was for any game system. Obviously, we spoke about Bolt Action and Blood Bowl, games that we were passionate about, but it was for any game system. And as soon as you say, you're going to play this game system and the winner will win $1,000, you can hear the news jerk. But we had a good think about it over a couple of months. We spoke to people, did research, conducted polls to get information so that it wasn't just our opinions. We could base them in a little bit of fact. And we naturally took positions of for and against to an extent. And, from my own position, the only person I know truly I can talk about is myself. What would I do? How would I play? How would it affect me? And I know that a cash prize would turn me into a horrible person.
Right? Same.
So, but it's like, what horrible things would I do, and how could
Mm-hmm.
you? Because I couldn't be the only one, and so it was for anybody that was listening that is thinking about conducting a cash prize tournament. Watching us perhaps raise problems and concerns that they may never have heard. So it was really well received by a lot of communities, and it's one of the episodes where we have had the most interaction and commentary back. So we were quite proud of the work, and we will probably end up revisiting the episode topic at the end of the year in case somebody has actually done this idea of a cash prize tournament.
I hope not.
I I if your audience are happy to go to Two Guys One Dice Cup podcast
Please.
and search for it, it will be, oh goodness, I hope it's labeled season 4 episode 1 if I've got my own labeling correct. And it's with my good friend and co-host Phil Cairns. So
Yeah, man. If you're listening to this and you're looking for a good podcast episode to listen to, I know not everyone who watches this show loves Blood Bowl. That is an episode, particularly if you're a bolt action player. You should be listening to that episode. It is great content. There may be a little bit of hobby chat at the beginning where you might go, well, I'm not sure if that's, what I want to listen to. But even then, Al, you're talking about, how to turn and burn a bolt action army, what you might do with it. There's a lot of bolt action content in that episode. And it's just a great introduction to the show as someone who's listened to a bunch of the episodes. So please do listen to that. Additionally, Al, I've been listening to you on Bo Mortenson's show as you guys have been talking about the WTC lists. Why don't we talk about that? Because, you've talked lists with him many times in the past. However, coming up very soon, if not today or in the next couple of days, you guys will be putting out some episodes about the new WTC lists for next year's event.
Yeah, working with Bo Mortensen in Denmark is a really great experience, and it's something his friendship's something I've enjoyed through Bolt Action in recent years. And we, the series of videos we did with Bo covering theatre selectors has been really well received. We did top 10 access, in our opinions. We're just guys on the internet, our opinions. Top 10 access, top 10 allies, and then a sort of best of the rest, a bunch of theatre selectors that we argued about. And the next sort of episodes we're doing, or I'm doing with Bo, are covering as you said, the World Team Championship bolt action lists, and they have just been released hours ago. So we're going to produce a bunch of videos giving first reactions, and the lists aren't going to be for everybody. They're very hyper competitive. There are things that will make historical gamers cry. So just be cautious and be careful when you watch the videos.
Yeah, as always, keep in mind it's for a specific audience. Now, folks who are watching this on YouTube, Al's camera is titching in and out, but that's okay. His audio is solid. We're good.
Yep.
Let's talk Combat Patrol. Oh, actually, before we get to Combat Patrol, how can you find Bo's videos?
Bo, he is on YouTube exclusively. And if you search for Bo Mortensen, so BO space Mortensen, Mortenson, you should find them. He runs a series of different tutorial videos, which are extremely good for the beginner bolt action player. He talks about different tactics. He's a teacher by trade, so every now and then you'll see him pull out the whiteboard and interactive images and such. So. And he presents it in a good manner. And granted, he is from Denmark, but he is fluent in English and can communicate extremely well.
He does,
and he's got a great handle on the bolt action game.
Yep. I've never met the man. I've listened to a lot of his shows. His opinion about what is appropriate in bolt action and mine are very different because he is very competitive. But fundamentally, he absolutely has the game Like, he has a very strong understanding of the game. And I got to say, as you say, the tutorials for beginners and when you're, just some good tactical tips, amazing. But when he starts talking about this list is bad because it doesn't have 3 Stuarts or you're not running Gurkha paratroopers, I just start going, oh, my eyes are bleeding. Why?
And that's what you have to remember. But Bo doesn't
Exactly.
make any illusions about that. He is a competitive player,
Mm-hmm.
and his content is targeted at other competitive players or players that want to increase their competitive ability. I can assure you, though, from having spent a lot of personal time with Bo, if you want to play a fun game against an extremely fun opponent, he's your man.
That's awesome. Yeah, man. I actually, just watching the videos, I got the impression that was kind of the way he lays it down. He doesn't strike me as I'm going to make sure that I have fun, and fun is a finite resource, and I'm going to take all of the fun on this table and you're going to get none. That is not my impression of him as a player, because unfortunately those players do exist. Let's shift to Combat Patrol. Now, Combat Patrol, and I am embarrassed to say this is an episode that was supposed to have come out a couple of weeks ago, but because I've started in a new school year and I've been unwell, I have not actually been able to record this. So if you are listening to this podcast on the day it releases, which is March 5th, which is the day we're recording it, tickets actually close tonight. It is a 20-player capped event, and it is at House of War on March 12th. It is a 500-point bolt action event. And yes, 500 points means they've tweaked a couple of the rules to make sure that when you are playing in this, that you're not going to run into some weird rule quirks for a game that was written for 1,000 points-ish or more or less, if that makes sense. And we'll talk about those in a second. Let's talk about the event. It is almost sold out. It will be 20 players. The gentlemen who are running it is John Mack, who ran the really successful Bolt Action League in Melbourne last year, and Drew Baxter, who of course ran CanCon a couple years ago very successfully. I played in one of Drew's events I believe it was March, and I had a blast. The guys put on amazing. Everything I played in that those guys have been a part of has been sensational. So I can only imagine this is going to be a great event. And if you're listening to this now and you haven't signed up and you are in Melbourne or will be in Melbourne on March 12th, please get in. Look for the Combat Patrol player pack on Facebook. Yeah. That in mind, let's talk about the player pack, because everything we do today will revolve around the rules for this event. So each round will be 90 minutes. So it's going to be short and sharp. And the tables are going to be on 4x4s. Now, for me, that is going to dramatically change the way I list for this event. We have, as I said, each army is 500 points max. You can only have 8 order dice maximum. Now, if you were thinking, wow, 90 minutes is short, yes, but it's very few order dice. Armor vehicles are restricted. You may include 1 8 or higher armor vehicle, but it has to be open topped. You may include up to 1 7-up armor instead of the 8-up, or you could include 2 6-up soft skin vehicles. Vehicles cannot take any additional weapon options except trucks that can take a medium machine gun. I haven't asked the TOs, but I was going to ask, could Jeeps do that? But I don't think they can, now that I think about it. Players may use a generic reinforced platoon or a theater selector. Only vehicles with a maximum of 2 LMG machine guns in general, plus its main weapon, or 3 weapons in total, are allowed. You cannot take DACA Stuarts to this. No weapons can have HE3 or HE4, so that takes my priest out of the equation. Maximum 1 infantry flamethrower, no vehicle-mounted flamethrowers, free units or equipment of any kind. Yes, kids, that means free British artillery observers, free Soviet inexperienced squads, free shirts and squads with LMGs, all that business. All of those free things, you can still have them, but you have to pay for 50% of them using the normal points cost, rounding down. The preliminary bombardment rule will not be used, and turret jam will not be used. Now, those are that's a tidy little rules pack. Al, what are your thoughts going into this? I mean, that really does change the way that we will be listing for this, isn't it?
Yeah, it changes the way I would list, of course, because there's restrictions involved. But again, it's a smaller game, smaller dice count. When you presented that player pack to me and invited me to come on to do this, I jumped at the chance because I knew straight away a couple of the sort of army ideas that I would want to take.
Al, I think we lost you for a second, my
Challenging
friend.
little event. So, yep, I'll pick it up from. So when you presented this player pack to me and asked me to come on the podcast, I thought the restrictions were excellent. They very much focus your listing, and it should produce a good, fun, challenging event.
I think so too. I'm wondering, just those tank rules in particular really does narrow the field of what you can bring. And as I was sitting in front of my case last night, looking at the armies I have, it really does. I guess I just said it narrows the options of what vehicles I can bring to this event. And I think that's a good thing. Yes, there are going to be vehicles you can take to this that will be very strong for this event. But it also narrows things down. Like I was thinking, hey, just cheeky, I wonder if I could throw a meat chopper in there because I recently got the model. Nope, that's 4 weapon systems. Can't do it. And went, okay, that's cool. I like that because I don't want to face that. You can't see the old quad medium machine gun truck from the Soviets for the same reason, which I also like because I don't want to face that in this event. But let's get into the nitty gritty. So I've got some options.
Okay.
But I know you've made a few sample lists, but going into your list and maybe just so everyone's aware of where I'm coming from as we're going to be building the list off for me in a minute, I have the options of the British, the Germans, U.S., both winter and U.S. Marine Corps, the Chinese nationalists, and Japanese. I think those are what I've narrowed it down to. I do have Soviets up my sleeve as well of 3 varieties, NKVD, Black Death, and Scouts. But I think I'm taking those out of the equation and I'm just going to stick with those 5 choices. I had to narrow it somehow, I guess. But Al, going into this discussion, you put together a couple lists yourself. So maybe your list discussions will help me narrow down our choice of what we're going to be running today. So talk to us about some of the things that you have put together for today.
Okay. As I said earlier in this show, I've been talking a lot about theatre selectors recently. So all the knowledge I've got for theatre selectors is still fresh in my mind. So I decided to go to Greece for my very first 500-point army.
Yes. You never see Greece on the table. I love it.
Exactly. You never see Greece on the table because in open format events, they quickly become overpowered. But in an event where there are limitations, removing free units, removing, big tanks and big guns and multiple rocket launchers and all this horrific stuff, these smaller nations come into play. So I have got a 7 order dice list, 499 points, 1940 to 1941.
Mm-hmm.
Leading the army as a second lieutenant regular. Then I've got an 8-man infantry section regular with a light
Mm-hmm.
machine gun. Then I've got a 7-man infantry section regular, just the 7 guys with rifles.
Mm-hmm.
Then I've got 2 full strength, inexperienced 11-man rifle squads. So 2 squads of 11 inexperienced at full strength. I have got 1
That's
sniper.
a lot of dudes. Yeah.
It's a lot of dudes, yeah. I've got 1 sniper, regular.
Mm-hmm.
And the good thing about um, the Greek snipers, they come with pistols, which
Of course.
you don't see in some of the other armies. And
Mm-hmm.
then I have taken a Vickers. So it's a fully enclosed armored vehicle, 7+ armor. It's got a turret mounted HMG, coax
Mm-hmm.
MMG, comes with recce, 75 points.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
as soon as I had finished writing that list, I fell in love with it, and I would love to go to this event, but it's in the other side of the world, and I can't.
You'd also have to paint a Greek army, but knowing you, you would probably do that very quickly. Whereas I would spend 6 months painting that many models. What did you? Okay, so let's talk about that list. So besides having lots of guys and a dependable small tank, what was your thought process? Obviously, the sniper with the pistol gives you tough fighter in case someone charges you, um, which makes it a little bit more durable. But what? Why did you make those choices?
You, I mean, I wanted to get a good dice count, 7
Mm-hmm.
or 8, get up
Mm-hmm.
towards the top end of it. You have said this on your show many times when you speak about bolt action. It's an infantry game, and infantry win you games.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to envision this small Greek combat patrol up on the border, trying to defend their country, with 2 regular squads that have got some sort of level of experience of combat, and then the
Mm-hmm.
quickly drafted in inexperienced units. Um, and a sniper. It's just they're all good, dependable choices.
They are.
I don't need to worry about lots of flamethrowers or multi launchers or big tanks rolling at you.
Mm-hmm.
Good good numbers of rifle shots and backed up by a nice little tank. The coax MMG and the HMG. We've putting out 5, 6, 7, putting out 8 shots.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, it's got a good balance and a good feel to it.
Can you fire both of those weapons because it's coax? I thought you could fire one or the other.
That's an extremely good point. I just saw HMG and thought, but that's its main gun, like a light anti-tank gun. So it's one or the other. But again, that still wouldn't put me off taking it. It's a
No,
nice little tank.
it is. And as because we talked about how to play Greek competitively with the best Greek player I know, which is Craig Baxter, on an episode of the Ghost Army not too long ago. And we talked about this tank. And I like this tank because, yes, it would be more ideal if the weapon systems weren't coax and so you could fire them simultaneously. But if you have to choose, you can pick the situation. If you need the armor penetration value, you have the HMG. If you want the additional shots to shoot into infantry or for whatever other reason, you have the other one. And then you get to choose. Again, not the most ideal thing in the world because it would be better if you could fire both. But it is still a solid little tank, and I really do rate it.
Yep.
Al, let's talk about your other list. What else did you put together?
Yeah. So the next list I went to write up, again, stuck with a theatre selector, and I have gone for Germany,
Mm-hmm.
1945, last levy, the fall of the Third Reich. And in my mind, I had this would be a great hobby option to do, just because
Mm-hmm.
of the uniqueness of the miniatures. But I was thinking a tiny little bit more competitively about this list.
Okay.
But it's 8 order dice, so I've gone to the
Mm-hmm.
max, 499 points. So it's a second lieutenant regular with 2 assistants. So it's losing the small team. There's 3 guys.
But you have the assault rifle hit team going on in this situation.
Yes, that's exactly why I've done it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's 3 regular guys as the officer team, and they will have assault rifles as modelled. Then I have gone with 2 10-man full strength units of Hitler Youth.
Oh,
So
wow.
they, yeah, gone deep. So they all
I
come with
haven't seen
rifles.
10-man units of Hitler Youth ever.
Yeah. Again, it's trying to take advantage of that full strength for the reroll for leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those NCOs has got a submachine gun.
Okay.
I have then gone for a medic veteran. Of course, they only come in veteran.
Yeah.
Yep. I then have selected the Volks Grenadier Squad. Again, it's at full strength, so 10 guys. And they have all got assault rifles and 1 Panzerfaust. So it's a
Yeah.
tooled up kit. But again, they're inexperienced. They've got the mixed quality rules, so they could go up, they could go, extra pins, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Then one of my favorite units that I try to use when I can, it's a light artillery piece veteran. I love a veteran light artillery piece.
Yes.
60 points, 3 men, comes with a gun shield. You dig this thing into some hardcover or behind a wall.
Mm-hmm.
So hardcover, gun shield, veteran. Yep, have to kill it on 6s. Yeah, tough work.
It's great.
Uh,
And if someone tries to dig you out, because you're going to have smaller squad sizes for this event, theoretically, smaller squad sizes. If
uh,
someone tries to charge that with regular and experienced troops, veteran veteran
yeah,
gun crew have been the bane of my existence when I charge them for my entire bolt action career. I still
yep.
very
They'll
fondly
fight it
remember.
off. Then armored car,
Oh yeah, sorry, go ahead.
motorbike with sidecar with MMG.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. It's one 6+ armor unit, and
Mm-hmm.
then I have taken a tow for the artillery piece, and I've taken a Kettenkrad at
Perfect.
regular. And again, that's my second 6+ armor piece to conform. Excuse me, to conform with the rules of
Yeah.
the player pack.
And the Kettengrad is to get your lieutenant hit team around.
Yes, it is, Brad. But that's I can see this little army in Berlin,
Mm-hmm.
just the lieutenant squad on the Kettenkrad trying to run around to plug holes in the defense with all their inexperience, Hitler Youth who are doing a Jojo Rabbit crazy actions. Um,
Yeah.
the the Volks Grenadier are a great squad, but again, if they're caught on the hop while they're inexperienced, they'll
Yeah.
they'll get gunned down pretty quick. Um, so I I love this army
Yeah.
already, and again, I would love to play it. Um,
I love that you're leaning into inexperience so heavily. I was almost considering going the other way for this. Why were you thinking inexperienced?
I I'm a big fan of boots on the ground.
Yeah.
I like having a good count of infantry models on the table. With the Greeks beforehand, not so much, just because um, with the Germans, there's the chance that there's green
Yeah.
and mixed quality, so there's the opportunity for them to go up to regular or veteran, um, which is just down to luck. Whereas
Yeah.
with the Greeks, they don't have that, so I wanted to have both regular squads and inexperienced squads to offset each other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, though, with the Germans, I've leaned really heavily into lots of inexperienced, sort of green, you know, um, party indoctrination troops. But then again, the lieutenant team, the artillery piece, the motorbike and sidecar. These elements are reliable and will keep
Mm-hmm.
keep spitting out pins, to keep things at bay and to kill stuff. So
Yeah.
it's about trying to find that balance. But I suppose as well, I'm thinking about what are my opponents going to try and take.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going for regular and veteran troops, they'll be short on bodies and short on shots. Um,
That's true.
so that's the thinking there. And again, as well, thinking the 4 foot by 4 foot board is going to be quite
Mm-hmm.
tight. So I know that in Australia, the tables are always, medium to high density terrain. It's always
Mm-hmm.
really good quality, really well out. Good, there's no question you turn up to an Australian event and the terrain and the table layouts are going to be on point, um, so that you're not going to come unstuck.
No,
So
exactly.
with big units like this, they should be reasonably easy to hide and get up the board,
Yep.
and to get involved into some close quarters action.
Mm-hmm. I I ran a 4x4 event years ago, and I remember it was more points than this, but I remember being uh, astonished at how small the tables actually felt and looked once the games were going on. That was before I got into heavily playtesting everything. It was more of a, hey, let's do this thing; it'll be fun. And that was one of the lessons that I learned, that I really need to be playtesting everything a lot before we put things out. And so after that experience, part of me for this, and I was talking to our good friend Albert last night, who is one of the best local players, um, just how many SMGs are we going to see in this event? And that made me instantly go, oh God, I guess I'll just bring the Japanese, because, if someone charges me, at least I'll have Fnatic. But I don't know if that's the route I want to go. Um, well, Al, let's start narrowing this down, because if I'm bringing up
Yep.
Japanese, then let's go. Now, armies of Japan. I have two Japanese armies, a huge variety of tanks, and they have what you had for the Greeks, which is lots of extremely cheap, extremely small, lightly armored tanks that conform with the rules of this event. Option one. We have the Chinese. Now, the Chinese national rule is for nationalists is basically just you get a free 14-man squad. Except obviously not for this event. You would pay for half of it, but still, that's pretty cheap. And there's lots of really interesting unit options in here. That said, I've been playing a lot with the Chinese, so I think I'm going to put them aside today after we've been talking.
Yep.
Winter Americans, honestly, I need to touch up some of the paint jobs before I'm happy putting them on the table in an event again, and I didn't paint them in the first place. So I think U.S. Marine Corps, maybe. Germany, I was strongly considering my Battle of the Bulge army, but the more I think about it, the more I need to get rid of something. But ironically, listening to you talk about your inexperience list has really got me wanting to do my G.I. Joe villain list, the Cobras, which I've never taken to an event. And I have crap loads of blue shirts. And if I'm going to go inexperienced, that's the one. And Britain, look, my Sikhs are an extremely competitive list, but I don't think that's for this event, because this is beginner friendly, fun event. So I'm going to put them aside because I know that can be ugly. Yes.
What I will jump in though, when you're talking about your Brits, if you and I thought about doing this. If you were to do a British theatre selector and take the Indian national characteristic, you could pay 50 points to get 10 guys.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty good deal.
That is an amazing deal. 10 regular dudes would be for 50 points.
Yeah,
It would be great. But
I
again,
really thought about it, but it
yeah.
wasn't for me.
Plus, the Blackheart Bombard is a great little piece of kit to put on the tabletop. 25 pounder. There's some really, really solid options because you would have the versatility to be to be able to fire it as a light artillery piece or as an AT gun, depending if your opponent has light armor. And that gun, while normally bouncing off a lot of big tanks, there aren't going to be those big tanks in this event.
No,
So that gun could be deadly. But I'm intentionally putting those aside because I I don't think I want to be that guy. And I could very easily make something ugly with that list, and I'm not going to. So, the Japanese. We don't see a lot of Japanese players down here. The light tanks are super tempting, but I almost wonder if at this point level, having that many bodies on the board with Fnatic could cause feel bads for my opponents. And
I I I hear what you're saying about the feel bads, but what you'd have to consider for yourself is that you're got like a single style of gameplay with them, which is
yeah,
just run forward and stab. How
yeah, but I
boring
don't
would
do
that
that.
be for you as a player?
Yeah.
That would be really
I
boring for you as a player.
yeah. I see. I don't play Japanese like that. I play them as a standard army. And then when people charge them and they forget that I have Fnatic because they almost forget I'm playing Japanese, they're all of a sudden, oh, wait, everyone has Fnatic. And yep, it's
Yeah,
just a regular Japanese army. I'm just playing them as riflemen, not as, the charge bonsai brigade. It's
yeah, the
because
bamboo spear fighter brigade.
yeah, I've never used a bamboo spear fighter ever. So I think I'm going to put the Japanese aside again. I think some people might be saying, well, why are you putting away your best tools? Oh, trust me, there's a few good tools left, friends. So are we going to take the U.S. Marine Corps, which is my most recently painted bolt action army, which is honestly part of the reason why they're still on the list, because I've never played with them in an event, or am I going to rock my Cobras? I haven't talked to the tournament organizers, and while I think one of them might think it's cool and funny that I brought GI Joe villains to his event, the other one seems a little bit more historical minded. May not go over super well, so I think I have to eliminate Cobra, as much as that kills me to say. And I'm not bringing my GI Joe army because I'm still painting. In fact, I finished painting a GI Joe character. Look for it this week. I'm bringing back the Joe of the day. I'm very excited to be adding to that project. It is one of the weirdest looking original GI Joes, and I'll leave it with that. And you can look for it on Facebook, boys and girls. I think it's time for the U.S. Marine Corps. Al, what do we think? Is that a reasonable choice for this event?
I will. Let's. What are you going to put in the list? I don't. United States are not a bad option.
Well,
Um,
U.S. So the national rules are not being curtailed by the player pack. It is a very, as I joked for years, calling the U.S. easy mode. It's a very forgiving army. And though I don't have a ton of experience with my Marine Corps, I guess I do have some because I played them in the part of the league last year. And the national rules are very solid. And given that I'm running Marines, the Marines have the versatility of being the move and fire US rules with having additional assets you can add in the form of bars, pistols, and SMGs. So they really can be a close combat monster and a firepower monster. I mean, obviously, you don't want to spend all the points, but I think if we ran them as regular, you could get the best of both worlds almost. Boots on the ground with firepower. And yeah, I don't know. Let's actually look at the list, shall we? So I'm going to jump over, and ladies and gentlemen, we are going to try something new here. If you are joining us on, if you are joining us on YouTube, I am going to be screen sharing for the very first time. If it is. If this doesn't work, I apologize in advance. But here we go. We have our lists. So I'm going to go to generic. Why am I only in Italian? Oh, I see. Sorry, I haven't used Easy Army in quite a while. Clearly, the last time I did, I was playing Italians. So let's go to Marine Corps generic, which would be a U.S. reinforced platoon. Come on, you. It says Platoon 1 already exists. Please clear it first. Al, embarrassingly, I don't know how to do that because I never use this program.
I think you have to cancel out and select new platoon. If you go back to the main landing page of Easy Army.
Yeah.
Yep. Select new platoon.
Oops. Not new
It's
list.
slightly go down. There's a tab.
Platoon. Sorry. There we go.
Yep. New platoon. Select your country, which you have done, and then select the reinforced platoon you want, and there you go.
All right. Well, let's talk. I assume we'll just be using a second lieutenant for this. I'm going to go with regular because I'm anticipating a regular list. And just to give him a friend, I'm going to give one regular rifleman.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that. I hate hearing people talk about the officer tax when they create armies. The officer is an integral part of the army. He's not a tax. He's not a burden to take. He's a tool you should be using. Make them regular.
Yeah. Now, Al, I'm going to be running U.S. Marine regular squads. I was thinking I would run squads of 8 normally, but for this event, because it's fewer points, I might run, or at least start with, and I can change it later, squads of 7. I would like the NCO to have a submachine gun because I think, the old Tommy gun, submachine gun NCO is so iconic. And I'll probably have one additional guy. I'm going to have 2 guys with bars per squad because, I could put 3, but I don't have all the models to paint 3 for every squad. I do have enough to do 3 in a couple, but honestly, 2 is probably enough for this event. And whenever I play Marines, I give the guys with the bars pistols. So there are 4 tough fighter having models. I'm not going to give everyone shotguns. I am not going to do anything with stubborn because I don't think that would help. Also, I don't know what book that's in. So I think I like that squad. Al, do you have any comments on that? What do you think?
Look, your rationale about the submachine guns, you're doing that for theme and flavor, which I can't argue with because there are so many good images from the Pacific theater of US Marines, getting up from the trenches or from sand dunes with the SMG. But I would maybe look at those points as something you might have to remove later in this process.
Absolutely.
When you're struggling, you may struggle at the end to get under the 500 point mark.
I couldn't agree more. And I think this is just the broad strokes. Now, for people who have asked, how do I list? I often come up with a theme. In this case, I'm going for sort of beginning of late war U.S. Marines. Yes, I know I can tool up the special weapons, but I don't think I need to. So I'm looking at some guys that have some gear, but I'm also have enough of them that I'm following a solid theme. Yes, it looks a little cut and pasty now, but this is how I start as broad strokes. And then I go back and I cull and I change and I edit. The other thing I'm going to do here, I do want to have a flamethrower in this list. And I've been thinking a lot about how to do that because I'm anticipating there's going to be some vehicles, and I'm guessing that I'm probably not going to have one. So I'm actually
what you should say, Brad, for your listeners that may only be doing this in audio, you've repeated that Marine squad 4 times in your list
correct.
now.
Yep. And now I've put in a regular engineering squad that is literally the same thing, except the bar gunners do not have pistols, and there's a flamethrower in their place.
Yep.
So at the moment, I have the lieutenant. I have, with a friend, I have 5 squads of 7 guys tooled with the weapons that I said. The 4 identical ones with 2 bars, 2 SMGs, and the bar gunners have 2 pistols. And I have 7 regular engineers with 2 bars, 2 submachine guns, and a flamethrower. Now, just that takes me to 518 points. So we knew right off the bat that this was going to be kind of hard to make things fit. I was anticipating not adding any vehicles. So I think I'm kind of close to obviously where I'm going to end up. But I think it's time to start shaving. But before we start cutting back, I don't think we have all the tools that we'd like. I was thinking for this list that I would have an artillery piece, something that could reach out and put some pins on. Now, I do have the multiple rocket launcher painted for this from the US. And yes, people always seem to forget that the US can take rocket launchers. But I don't think that we're going to see enough warm bodies necessarily for this. That said, it is on a 4x4 table. The alternative to that would be a light artillery piece, which I really like. Al, do you have any thoughts about what, if either of those, if you think those are good spends at 500 points?
Listen, the light artillery piece, as you have heard me say about the German list I wrote, I think they're great little tools. Veteran light artillery piece, although I suspect, though, from memory, the US Marine Corps, I don't think they get gun shields.
No, they don't.
No.
Maybe not historically. I think maybe in the rule book you can do it. But that every picture I've seen, and I have seen quite a few, there are no gun shields on Marine light artillery pieces.
Or maybe it's is it not an option that you actually have to buy? It doesn't come as a standard piece of kit.
I honestly not sure. It has been a while.
Yeah.
So I want to put this in as veteran, but I'm also cognizant that everything else in my army is regular. I think I might have to bite the bullet and make it regular, just to see where we end up. Is there anything else you think my list needs? I was going to put a flamethrower in. I would love to put a bazooka in, but obviously I snuck the flamethrower into a regular engineering squad, and the bazooka I think is just too expensive. Of course, I'm going to be wishing I had it on the day. For those people thinking, well, you could take a heavy machine gun on something. I mean, I could take a truck and then put a heavy machine gun on it, A, to get some mobility, and then B, to have the heavy machine gun or a machine gun in general just to put out shots at range. But I have the bars in all of my squads. And honestly, on a 4x4 table, I am going to regret saying this, but I don't think I need the mobility of a truck. What are you thinking, Al?
I agree. I don't think you're going to need to have to move big squads far long distances. And especially with the Americans moving and firing, you don't want to be zipped up in a truck for a couple of turns to try and get somewhere. You want to be moving and putting out shots. So, no, I don't think you need transports. And if you remember back to the 2 lists that I discussed, the only transport that actually came into play was a Kettenkrad, and that was to zip a 3-man officer team around the table. Well, not even around the table, just around to keep my inexperienced squads moving. You know, not even to attack, so to speak, to plug the gap where there was, pins being received. So no transports required.
I mean, I really hate doing this, but I'm also wondering if shaving the lieutenant back to inexperienced.
I would.
I normally would hate doing that, but I was just watching Band of Brothers and just thinking of the lieutenant that would wander off during the siege in Bastogne makes me kind
Yep.
of want to include a crappy leader, but I don't know if that necessarily fits this list. Um, I do like the idea of a lot of hardened NCOs leading Marine squads and then some random lieutenant, stumbling around in the background. And I have to shave off 63 points. I guess before we get to shaving, is there anything else you would add? I'm tempted to add War Dogs because I've never added them, but I don't think it's going to add anything to this event.
I think all the war dogs would add to your list is an order dice. It's a
Yeah,
cheap order dice. It's 18 points veteran for a single model with a submachine gun and the dog, which gives you a spot and distance, but nobody will be hidden anyway. So
no,
it's a
exactly.
it's a good cheap dice, and
It is.
it's an infantry model. He'll score, he'll claim and contest objectives for you. I've used him in the past. He's a good guy. Give him a name. He deserves it. He's by himself with his dog. God love him.
Yeah, I
What I
mainly
do
because
agree.
I don't want
What
to
I
see a
do.
doggo die on the tabletop. I know that's weird. I think I will avoid that. I am wondering,
What
like,
I
I
do
would
agree with,
normally.
though, Brad, is that keeping your flamethrower buried in an engineer squad is the right thing to do. Taking a solo flamethrower team at this low points level, because when he rolls to hit, misses, and when you roll a one for your fuel and that order dice gets taken off the table, you will be absolutely furious.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and it's also significantly cheaper because once you actually start putting it in as an upgrade to a squad, it's only 20 points versus the 50 points it would be to be the independent
Correct.
squad, and I just can't see it any other way. So I think, Al, unless you're seeing something I don't, and of course we can go back and forth the other way, I would probably just start shaving squads. My first knee-jerk reaction is to drop the lieutenant to inexperienced if I was desperate for points. And let's be honest, I'm kind of desperate for points. However, as you said, I've almost over geared up the squads. But if I pull 3 points off of each of those squads, it's 12 points. I don't know if that's going to necessarily be the best way of, sorry, not 12, 15 points, which will help. But even if I make the lieutenant inexperienced, we're talking 18 points plus 15 points. That's not going to be enough to drop that down. As much as I'm kind of desperate for order dice, because I only have, 6? I am tempted to drop one of the Marine squads outright and then maybe add some small teams. What are you thinking?
I would do the test first. I mean, you're looking at your officer. Are you sold on keeping his assistant as well?
That's a good point. Actually, I'm not. I do really like having an assistant, but getting rid of an assistant would make my life a lot easier.
Yeah.
So if I dropped it back to a second lieutenant wandering around by himself and an experienced one, and I got rid of his friend, I'm actually down to 538 points, which, I makes that character less effective on the tabletop, but I don't know how effective that two-man team was going to be in the first place. So, that might be a thing. All right. So we have that. The light artillery piece is already cheaper than most light artillery pieces because of the lack of a gun shield, and it's only 45 points. So it's actually more efficient than a mortar. So doing something with that doesn't help. I wouldn't make the light artillery piece inexperienced because the rest of the theme is kind of regular and I don't want to drop it, but also B, -1 to hit feels real bad when you're trying to use a big gun.
It does, and if you to do that, you would be limiting yourself to just firing indirectly. because that -1 to hit for being inexperienced would just ruin it for you. So don't do that.
Now, I would normally talk about dropping a guy off or a couple guys off one squad and making a small anchor squad somewhere. However, with this list, because U.S. Marine squads come minimum size 7, I'm already at the smallest it can be. The only one I can make smaller is the engineering squad, which I don't necessarily want to make smaller because I really want to have warm bodies around that flamethrower to keep it going. But just for giggles' sake, what happens if I drop the NCO? If I keep the NCO, if I drop one guy off the engineering squad and I drop the bars off because I'm anticipating getting close and personal with that, and then had that. Now I'm down to 518 points. It would be 508 points if I dropped the engineering squad again to have it be 5 guys. Then I would have 2 SMGs, a flamethrower, and 2 rifles. I'm going to just click it for giggles' sake. And so what I end up with is 508 points. I have my 4 infantry squads ready to go. I have my engineering squad. It's small, it's punchy at close range. It has a couple of riflemen to throw out individual pins at long range, but it doesn't have that bar goodness. So I'm not sold on that change. But what do you think, Al?
It's a risk, you've got a really small unit now that's going to be really vulnerable to weapons fire. A couple of casualties is going to diminish its ability to make war really quickly.
Yeah.
So you would have to protect it. But you're right in the sense that stripping at the bars, because you want to deliver that flamethrower into the guts. It's your best killing tool in the army. So there's no point having long range fire on that unit.
Agreed. Oh, this is the uncomfortable part of listing, friends. And I guess this is the process that people wanted to see, although it is far more cramped at this point level. And I've really painted myself into a corner by taking the Marine squads that I can't drop in size anymore. I'm wondering if I should drop a couple of MGs or maybe a bar, because I really do like having the firepower that those squads kick out. But
you've got the 4 infantry squads that are all kitted out the same. Maybe look to go down a path of having 1 or 2 of them be that up close and assault orientated, and then the other 2 is more fire support, if that's something you're thinking about.
That's a good point. I am trying to make generalist squads for a list that really can't afford that. If I dumped out the additional SMG on 2 of the squads, so I still have the NCO, which you can clearly see having the Thompson, and then I go to the first 2 squads. So I'm at, all I need is 2 points now, which I don't necessarily want to drop the pistols off of the bars in one squad. I know that would be the easy fix, only because that would make it, I would never remember which squad that is. And I don't want to get halfway through a game and look like I'm being gamey. I have attention deficit disorder. I will forget. And I don't want to be the guy who's like, oh no, I'm sorry. They shouldn't have had pistols there. So, I mean, I think it really just comes down to, if I drop out another SMG, now I'm at 499 points. I have my second inexperienced lieutenant by himself. I have a regular U.S. Marine squad with 2 bars, 2 Thompsons, and the bar gunners have pistols. And then the rest, I have 3 squads with 1 SMG. That's the NCO. And then I have 2 bar gunners in each squad, each with 2 pistols. And I have the 5-man engineering squad with the flamethrower and the SMGs.
Yeah. Brad, if you go up to the top tab and click View, you should be able to view the list in its
Yeah,
entirety.
that's right. I didn't know that. I'm just not using it.
There you go.
Part of me really wants to possibly drop the bars out of a squad and add a light, maybe the squad with 2 SMGs, and that would get me 12 points. And then I could go and put a small team in of some kind. But even then, I think the smallest team would be the War Dog. And that, as we said before, is 18 points.
Yep.
I don't know if an extra order dice for one dude is going to be worth that.
What order dice are you sitting on just now, Brad? Is it 6 or 7?
Well, given that, and I keep thinking, wow. Oh, sorry, 7.
That's a good. 7's the right good count.
Yeah, I think you're right. I guess I'm not used to this level, and part of me wanted to throw a chaplain in just so I could paint one, but again, I don't think this is the list for that. So I think this might be us, Al. You are a very critical thinker when it comes to listing for bolt action events.
Mm-hmm.
Would you run this list?
I would do a further couple of changes. I mean, the core of it is completely fine. You've got the right number of infantry models, and there's a flamethrower there as a sort of a good weed whacker, for lack of a better term. But I would try and get those infantry squads to have dedicated jobs.
Yeah.
So, fire support, bars and rifles only. Those are units that you're not really wanting to get into combat. And then maybe the other 2, give them the submachine guns and the pistols, so that if they are the ones that are moving up, getting closer. Those are the only changes I would make, Brad, now.
All right. Well,
everything else you've tweaked and fiddled enough.
Let's try that. So we'll say the first 2 squads will have SMGs. And are we going to give them 3 SMGs each?
If points could allow it, yeah.
All right, so we'll add the first 2 squads of regular guys. Will ditch the bars and the pistols, and I'm sure I can hear people yelling in the background not to do that, but that's why we're playing around with this, friends.
Yep.
And then the next 2 squads, we will get rid of the submachine guns altogether, and we'll have 2 bars in each squad, and we will have 2 pistols in each squad. Do we even want the pistols?
No. If it's the fire support squads, they just have as many bars as you can fit, and everybody else with rifles.
Okay, so I'll put 3 bars in each squad. And we'll go from there. I generally do like anchor squads, and I like squads that reach out and touch somebody. I guess because it was such a small point level, I was thinking, it'll be fine. I'll have generalist lists, and I thought the Marines would lean into that, but I definitely see your point. So I'm actually at 487 points.
Wow. How do we do that?
Yeah. So if we we have the inexperienced lieutenant, we have the 2 squads of 7 guys with 3 submachine guns each. We have 2 7-man squads with 3 bars each. Actually, I left an SMG in by accident, so I actually even have more points. I have my engineer squad with 2 SMGs and a flamethrower, and I have a light howitzer. I am tempted to try and add another cheap order dice, but as you say, though, Al, I have 7 squads already, and that might just be pushing it. But what if I want to add more bodies to the engineering squad? What if I dropped it back and I did, it's 501 points. I was going to say, make the engineering squad 7 guys as well, but only give it 1 SMG. But if I bump it up to 6 guys and keep the 2 SMGs, which is kind of what I wanted, I'm at 494. I could actually add. Oh, I can't add another submachine gun. That's as far as it goes. I mean, I could now add pistols to some of the other squads to get up to 500 points, and that would be good if I got assaulted. But at the moment, I have 6 points or 16 points if I was to go with dropping the engineering squad back to 5. At the moment, it's 6. I just wanted to add a little bit more durability to that squad.
I agree. Having 6 is good, a good number.
I mean, I could now add a gun shield, but we talked about that before. I'm not entirely sure what else to do here, Al. I have 6 points or 16 points. What would you do?
It's really tricky now. We're into the finer points.
Mm-hmm.
I would maybe even be tempted to dish out the pistols. If there are no more submachine guns that you can put in your sort of close quarters squads,
There are not.
Then I would start dishing out the pistols.
So I can't get a squad that has everyone with tough fighter. Again, I really want to stick with how things are modeled because I don't want to forget who has what. So is it weird that I do, because I have 2 pistols that are just guys holding pistols. So if I did, just modeling wise, if I added 1 additional pistol to one of the assault-ish squads each, I have 4 points left. And then just in case I do get assaulted, I add the 2 pistols back into the bar squads so that those guys, I do have a tiny bit of tough fighter. And I know that flies in the face of what we were trying to do here, but that gets me 500 points on the nose. Is that a bad idea?
No, I mean the points are there, and we're talking the finer few points now, so it's not impeding the overall strategy of your army now. It's just putting a little bit of redundancy if you get caught out anywhere. It's a good spend. This has been a good exercise.
Yeah, this was usually, folks, I buy a solid bulk of what I want and then I tweak it one way or the other depending. But even as we were going through this, I think you all saw that even my basic squads, I ran out of points instantly and went, well, I won't even do what I wanted then. So this has been a really tight tactical list and experience. Just for giggles, Al, do you want to see what we could do with the G.I. Joe Cobra army?
If you've got the time, mate, I have got the spirit to do it.
All right, let's do it. So I'm going to click new list. This is already saved, right? Yeah. I will download this just in case. And download. Yeah. Cool. Done. Let's go to a new list. So we're going to go with the Germans, and we will go with generic reinforced platoon, I believe, because honestly, I am not entirely sure which of these selectors I would use. So with a Cobra army, as much as I really want to have, Destro as my badass character, I really think there is you can't take inexperienced in Germans. I was going to say there is no character in the universe that is more deserving to be inexperienced than Cobra Commander.
if you
I
were
am.
really if you were really wanting to pick hard, mate, there's a I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a German theatre selector where you can take an inexperienced Waffen SS lieutenant, but I cannot
Yeah.
remember what selector
Nah,
it is.
that's all right. I'm actually for my list, and I am doing this somewhat going with what I have painted. I have a regular Cobra Commander model, and I have a Crimson Cobra Commander model, which is an alternate paint scheme to represent his being the leader of the Crimson Guard. I also have the twins, Tomax and Zaymon, that are the Crimson Guard leaders. And I was thinking that when I've run this in the past, I've run Cobra Commander as a leader, and then I took the twins as his sort of hit squad. So I was thinking I would run as his team. So look, I'm probably going to change that later, but I'm going to stick with that for now. If I am going to take that, though, I definitely need to take some Crimson Guardsmen. I would probably run them as a usual NCO with. We'll go one NCO with regular infantry. Again, I'm positive I'm gonna have to change this in a minute. I do have an LMG for that squad, but I don't think that's the role for this squad, so I'm not going to do that. And as much as I want to tool it out with assault rifles, yeah, that is definitely not going to be the case. But let's talk about our friends, the inexperienced blue shirts. So I know there's a million inexperienced squads in the German list. Al, do you have any particular favorites that you think would suit generic Cobra blue shirts?
Oh, that's a real struggle because these are the Vipers, aren't they?
Nah, they're just the old basic Cobra trooper wearing the blue that you always think of when you think of GI Joe.
If we were talking about blue uniforms, isn't there a Luftwaffe Field Division infantry somewhere in there?
Yeah, there is actually.
They come in, they're inexperienced, aren't they?
I think you may be right. But for those wondering at home what we're talking about, if you are looking at the YouTube, it is that fella right there. It is the one that you always think of if you think Cobra Trooper. So, Field Artillery Division. I'm struggling to see it on this massive list, which makes for really bad audio. Here we go. Luftwaffe Field Division. So inexperienced. It's an NCO and 5 guys, and I can take up to an additional 5 guys with rifles. Why don't we say what? You want numbers, Al? Should we go 10?
I'm always a fan of big numbers, mate.
All right, let's do 10. And do we give them a Panzerfaust just to keep them honest?
I wouldn't bother at this points level in the ability of or the number of vehicles you're going to encounter. I wouldn't bother.
I was going to say I was going to throw a couple Panzerfausts in, A, because I have them modeled, but also more to the point, B, just to keep people honest, they're more of a deterrent than I think an actual asset, because they still give the squad tank hunter, right? So people don't want to get it within charge range. So I might give them 1. It's 5 points. And again, I can strip it off later. Why don't we do 2 of those? Luftwaffe Field Division. So 10-man squad, Panzerfaust, and save back. Now, I really liked what you were saying before. So I'm actually going to go with because I have the Cobra Ferret, which is sort of the ATV quad bike model painted up. So I'm actually going to give that the regular motorcycle with machine gun that you did earlier, because that's one of my favorite units in the game. It's so good.
Yeah.
Al, are you happy with that?
Oh, yeah.
And what else do we want to do? Should we do a third? I mean, clearly I probably need some more units. So I'm going to go with another inexperienced squad. And why am I losing the field division constantly? There it is. 10. And I think I only have 2 Panzerfaust painted. We'll go with one now, just because. Nah, we won't. I don't want to give a light machine gun to any of these squads.
No, not at this stage.
Okay. Well, I'm at 410 points, Al. Um, I run. I
You're
could
at
drop
four.
a tier squad and put in
You're
an
at
engineering squad with the flamethrower
well.
because
You're at
that's
400.
R10 and the dreadnoughts. But what do you
You're
think?
at 400 and you're at 410 points.
Yeah.
You've got 6 order dice.
Yeah.
What do you think you're missing? You're missing a flamethrower, maybe?
Yeah. Or
Um,
something that can put a hurt on vehicles of any kind. What if I did something completely wild, and I'll take it off if it doesn't work? What if I put a, oh God, they're all, I don't know which one's which. What if we put a heavy autocannon in at regular? 60 points. The problem is it's static. So I would need to have a tow. Oh, in the German list, that wouldn't work. Because all of the tows are really expensive. Oh no, I can take the Lafley, I
no, you get the
suppose.
horse tows available for you in Germany.
Yeah. I don't actually have a I don't actually have that model though. I do have a tow for the Germans though. So if I did this, I would be at 485. I get this is a very rough draft, and I'm actually feeling really uncomfortable about this list. But I have a Cobra Asp, which is the artillery piece, which is a, if you look it up in the Joe-verse, it is a heavy autocannon. So I would have a heavy autocannon, which it has a range of 72, 2 shots, 3+3 pen, which would be good against light tanks, plus Rex infantry squad, something shocking. It also has the ability to be 1-inch HE, so it kind of fulfills the role of the light the light howitzer we had in the last list.
Yeah,
I don't know. What are you thinking?
it's good, and you don't have to worry about a static piece because you're in such a small board anyway.
Oh yeah, true.
You're not going to get lost, and I am pretty sure it does it count as a light artillery piece anyway.
No, it's heavy.
Uh,
I mean, for this though, what if we went wild and there's nothing, because we're not actually dealing with quote unquote real things. We could drop the tow and save points. As much as I have a really cool tow painted, I could make the. Oops. How do I thought I'd removed the Lafley. It's still there. Oh, clear. If I went to the artillery piece and instead of having it be the heavy, I could make it a light, which is good. And I have used light a lot. But if it's a light, it would still, yeah, one light. It would be +2 pen. So it's a loss of 1 pen, which I don't think particularly matters at this point. And now I'm at 460 points. I would have 7 order dice. I have my second lieutenant. I have my here infantry squad, the Crimson Boys. I have my 3 10-man squad of boys in blue who are inexperienced, each with a Panzerfaust. Actually, I think I only have 2 Panzerfausts and one that doesn't. I have the light autocannon, and I have the motorcycle with machine gun sidecar. This feels more mobile. This definitely feels like it is capable of punching at range a lot better, and I still have 40 points left. Al, what are you thinking?
yeah, I'm liking the list very much.
Okay.
And even if you weren't doing it for a Cobra theme, it works well for a Luftwaffe theme
Oh, it does, doesn't it? I hadn't even
with
thought
the
of that.
anti-aircraft gun and the artillery piece.
Yeah, of course. I'm an idiot. Yeah, it really does, doesn't it?
Yep, it works really well for one of those sort of static Luftwaffe defense forces, in
Mhm.
the sort of northwest France during the invasion. It's good.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. You're right. I hadn't
You-
even considered, but I have a bunch of HISS tanks that I could easily run in this list as an open topped uh, autocannon tank.
Remember though,
But
Brad, you would have to drop the bike.
yeah. Oh, correct. No, because they are AA guns. They are the AA vehicles, and they
Yeah,
would
but
come out of
you
the
can
tank
only
slot.
have
Oh, you're
an
right.
8+ armor open,
Or
one
6.
seven
Correct. You're right.
1 7+ by itself, or 2 6+.
You are 100% correct, sir. That is why we pay you the big bucks, and which is why I am still needing a second cup of coffee. That is for sure. So, what else would you do, Al? I am tempted to throw in more infantry. I'm just out of curiosity. If I ditched the, but that gets rid of my Crimson Guard theme.
What
If I got
what
rid of the
what
Crimson
what I
Guard,
would do here, Brad,
yeah.
with 40 points left over, I would go and take an inexperienced medium machine gun team. That should be 35 points.
Mm, I hadn't even thought about that.
And then with the last 5 points, give somebody else a Panzerfaust.
Yeah. What if because you can take an LMG team, right?
True, yeah, they're from the fall of France and Western Desert.
Yeah.
So they
I was
they
just
get to
thinking,
move
is
and
there
fire.
one because you're getting the bonus German points anyway. So if I took the 3-man light machine gun team, I don't need the anti-aircraft mount, obviously. It would be
Obviously.
a regular light machine gun, but it still has Hitler's buzzsaw, and I have 5 points left.
Panzerfaust, last 5 points.
Yeah. Panzerfaust. Out of curiosity, what if I added just a 5-man here, Pioneer Squad, and I give them a flamethrower and 4 SMGs? What would that do? How many points is that? That's too many. Yeah, that would be too many. I was thinking, what if I dropped the infantry squad and put in the other one instead? But no, that's not good. Oh, maybe. I actually didn't click save, so I actually don't know how many points that was. That's 70. Actually, Al, this may be a winner. Now that I
Yeah.
think about it, because it's very similar point value. Oh, it says invalid quantities chosen. Oh, that's strange. And flamethrower. And if I cleared, no, that's not going to do it because that's only 80 points. Yep, that was wishful thinking on my behalf. I just wanted to put Zartan and the Dreadnoks on the table, but that also
Not to
doesn't
be.
necessarily give me what I need in this list. If I dropped the machine gun and did that, but I don't know if that does what I want with the list. I like this. So we are talking, and yeah, I have 5 points where I can probably add something later, just to make sure I've painted a third. Panzerfaust. I have Cobra Commander with the twins at regular. Cobra Commander and the twins all have submachine guns modeled, so that would be how they are on the tabletop. I would have an 8-man rifle squad which would be my Crimson squad, I would have 3 squads of blue shirts at inexperienced. They're green, which means they're probably going to stay as inexperienced. But 2 of them have Panzerfaust. 1 of them does not. I have a light machine gun team, but with Hitler's buzzsaw, they do get the same number of shots as a regular medium machine gun team, and the 35 points is a cheap. I know people are going to yell, "You're taking a machine gun team," and whatever. I have a light autocannon in the form of the Asp that can be wheeled on the table because it's light, depending on the mission. And I have 1 vehicle, which is the regular motorcycle machine gun sidecar. This list is 8 order dice. This list feels lean and mean.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, I do too.
It's a good list. It's a really good list, Brad.
I think I'm going to turn in both and see what they say. And, yeah, it could be that they say, under no circumstances do we want G.I. Joe stuff at this event, at which point I'll say, that's fair. I get it. No problem. But if they do, that could be a lot of fun. So, yeah. Well, friends, I know that we had probably planned to talk for about an hour, and we've talked significantly more than that. And it has been a little rambly at points, but oftentimes you don't want to rush through listing and you want to think. At least that's how I approach it. I often put a list on a table of things that I want in a list, and then I think I'll put it down. I'll walk away. I'll come back later and say, oh, yeah, I do need this for this other thing later. And I'll make a little list. Then I'll actually write it out with points. And that's when I start tweaking and adjusting. But often, particularly if I'm taking this process seriously, I'll do this over the course of many days. And I'll keep coming back to it. And that's before I even get to anywhere near the tabletop. And yeah. Al, how does your process work? Because I know that you handle this differently.
It's the listing process, I actually do it fairly similar to yourself. I know the core elements of the miniatures that I want to use, put the list together, and then look back, and you have to strip in or adjust what's gone before. Putting together these 500 point lists, I was very clear in my mind what it was to try and achieve with each army, and in a different style. The Greeks, they've got a tank, 7+ armored tank to rotate their strategy around, whereas the Germans, with the Kettenkrad and the bike, the 2 6+ choices, their focus is on the infantry.
Yeah,
there's more infantry pushing forward, with the officer team trying to support them where and when they can. And that's what I understand is that, it sounds so silly to say, but pick the miniatures that you do want to play with, put them in the army, and then think about, what does your army need to do to win? Does it need to blow up lots of tanks? Does it need to claim lots of objectives? Does it need to survive 3 flamethrowers and 2 multi-launchers if you're unlucky enough to go to an event like that? Stubborn, exactly, or you need to be fanatic. But first of all, it should be about the miniatures that you want to use in your games.
Yeah, agreed. Part of me was just, when I was thinking for this event, was just for the Japanese, it was thinking, well, 5 8-man regular squads is 400 points. That's 40 regular fanatic riflemen that people will have to deal with. Put a lieutenant in there, that's 50 points. And then figure out the last 50 points. And that could be, I don't know, a bunch of different things. And maybe tweak it down a couple of squads or tweak up a couple of squads, depending on the role.
Yep.
And, that's another way I could have gone. But that would have given you the bodies. That would have given you the dependability. That would have given you the ability to reach out with those rifles, plus being somewhat durable in hand-to-hand combat on a tight table. But I don't know how fun that list would have been to run. Yeah, just again, another thing I had been thinking about for this event. Plus, there's some really cheap Japanese tanks, so I could have probably gotten a good tankette in there and maybe dropped one of the squads down slightly. And, Bob's your uncle. You're ready to go. But, yeah. Al, any final thoughts?
I am really envious of this format. 500 points, small games. I hope you enjoy the event, and I hope that the tournament organizer gets the full 20. And I look forward to seeing all the lists. I hope the lists are available for review.
Oh, that's a good point. Might be worth that. Yeah, might be worth asking John or Drew if they could do that. Might be worth talking about it on the show. Hey, who knows? Al, again, as always, I can't thank you enough for coming on today. It has been a pleasure, as always, to talk shop. And thank you for helping me nut through this. I'm not, again, this is by request. I would have never thought to do this. There's a lot of moments here that in this episode where I go, wow, that's bad audio, or, as far as bad radio, because I used to be on the radio because of dead air and thinking, but I wanted to show the process as it evolved, and it was a request. So if you have a request for the show, and thank you to everyone who's been messaging, there has been some really great ideas coming through recently. Please continue to do so. Please let us know. We love to hear your ideas and bring them to this show. If there's a format that you like and you want to see me doing more of in the future, please let us know. And of course, you can do that by going to the Cast Dice Facebook page, CASTDICE. Message the page. You're guaranteed a response by me. Hi, my name is Brad. I did have someone ask on the weekend, embarrassingly, about the long lost Italian episode that I recorded with Pedro and Albert last June that for some reason I have not put out. I actually have it. It's sitting on my desktop right there, and it will be coming at some point soon. But it does require a little bit of editing, and I've been a little time poor and changing computers, which has made the editing process very slow at the moment. I'm hoping that speeds up as I get a new device next week. Just pulling back the curtain so you see. Anyway, friends, I'm rambling. It is so great to talk bolt action. I'm looking forward so much to be a player, not a TO, in an event next weekend. And I look forward to talking about my experiences and my games, and we'll see which list I take. Or hopefully it's either one of them gets through, because I know there have been a few resubs for this event. I don't think either of the things I've turned in is particularly gross. But as always, it isn't my opinion, it's the TO. And if a TO asks you if it's not in the spirit of the event, that's totally cool, man. I just want to make sure that it fits with the shoe, the foot, the shoe fits the foot. When I'm failing with metaphors, Al, I think it's definitely time to go, and it is definitely time for a second cup of coffee. My friend, thank you so much for taking the time. It is always a pleasure to see your beautiful face. I will see you soon.
Stay safe.
Friends, as our good friend Casey always says, when you are playing the games that we know and love, I hope that your dice roll hot. I hope your beverages are very cold. And I hope that more than that, you are having fun. Stay safe out there, friends. Good night.